Hi, welcome everybody at EODF Live. Today we will host Jurriaan Kamer, our speaker at EODF conference in September. Jurriaan, you will soon appear on screen and we will start our conversation.
Hey,
Hi Jurriaan.
hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome on board. We are having a live LinkedIn live series and video series to introduce our speakers at EODF annual conference, which will take place in Budapest in September. And you are one of our keynote speakers, and I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with you. And you know, the theme of EODF conference this year is designing for turbulence.
hmm
And Formula One is one topic that relates a lot to turbulence. And I was just very curious how your passion to Formula One is coming and what is that metaphor we can have and how we learn from that turbulence, what we are
Yeah,
having now in the coming few years, what we are seeing that we have to adapt to change.
yeah. So my passion for Formula One started a long time ago when I was just watching the races. As a kid on television, I sometimes went to the racetracks just for fun and to see the drivers and the races. But I think must have been 8 or 9 years ago. I was invited to visit one of the factories, the Red Bull Racing factory in the UK. And I went with a group of executives to learn from Formula One to see what happened, and I was really blown away by how big this sport is, the facilities, all the things they put in place. Because I don't know, Sophia, do you have any idea how large one Formula One team is?
Um, I read in your book, I think it's around 50, right? Something pretty large. When they are
Well,
doing the retrospective, I think I remember you were mentioning that between 20 or 50 people are around and having the.
yes, but the Formula One teams, including the factory, is much larger than that. We're talking between 1,000 and 2,000 people per team.
Oh, wow.
So this is the largest team sport in the world. It's also the fastest moving team sport in the world, meaning that they deliver pit stops within 2 seconds. They have to innovate super fast to be ahead of the competition. The margins in qualifying are often hundreds or tens or hundreds or thousands of a second. And these small margins, they make a huge difference in winning or losing the championship. So all the teams are bringing over hundreds or thousands of innovations to the cars every week because they have to build these cars completely from scratch. It's not that they buy a car and drive it. No, they are designing every small component and every small element and constantly pushing to make it a little bit better and to learn from the competition. So this is why it's such an interesting example in terms of organization design because it's not that different from normal organizations where you want to be ahead of the competition, where you have to somehow organize yourselves with 1,000, 2,000 or more people, and you have to be on top of everything. So yeah, Formula One has started to be a source of inspiration. It's definitely not a perfect world. There with every org design, there are trade-offs, as you know. But it just has lots of lessons in terms of leadership, innovation, continuous improvement, and stuff.
Yeah. In your latest book in Unblock, you are talking about um, the six unblocking fear that
hmm
we can look at: the strategy, the steering, decisions, ownership, teamwork, and meetings.
Yeah.
And if we are going back to Formula One and organization, what do you think? What is the most important? Where to start?
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, it's important to acknowledge the principle of aligned autonomy, which is something I put central in the Unblock book. Is an organizing principle that I see really clearly in Formula One teams.
Mhm.
So aligned autonomy is the combination of alignment, meaning that everything adds up to the same overarching goal. In Formula One teams, that's quite simple, right? You have one clear goal. We have to win the race, and then if we win enough races, we win the championship. That's the clarity of goals that most businesses don't have, or it's actually pretty hard to achieve. But Formula One teams have that luxury, so everybody knows that's the goal, and every week we know, after every race, we know if we are getting closer to achieving it or not. And basically, all the hundreds of millions of viewers in the world also know how you're performing, right? So imagine that scrutiny as compared to normal organizations. But so that's the alignment piece. So how do you get 1,000 people to work in one direction so that everything that everybody is doing contributes to going and achieving that one goal? The autonomy piece is about having the craftsmen and the experts and putting them in the lead, meaning that they have a lot of freedom to decide what they want to work on and how they're going to approach working on that. So Formula One teams are from top to bottom designed to hire really good talent, giving them the conditions so they can do their work best, but not telling them what to do. They might be told or explained what are the most important problems we have right now, and it's always, often from the outside is clear what the problem is, but sometimes inside the teams they talk about, what the big factor right now, the limiting factor in our car is maybe how fast the gearbox shifts, or maybe it's the reliability of the engine, or maybe it's the aerodynamical package. These things are clear, but then it's up to the teams themselves to figure out how we're going to solve that. So that's the autonomy piece, where you have both alignment and autonomy, and that's the organizing principle. And from that lens, we can look at those 6 factors and talk about Formula One, but I think that's just something I wanted to put front and center.
Maybe it is related to this. You are saying that if there are no leaders, then what? And you are saying that facilitators. So that is that
Yeah.
role that could be not substituted, but going alive and is giving an emphasis to it. So if we are again seeing this parallelity between organizations and Formula One, can we imagine organizations without leaders and only having facilitators and self-organized team? And does it possible and can happen at Formula One, or it's just something that is not?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I have worked in self-managed organizations myself, including one that had over 400 people at one point. And from my ideological perspective, I really believe that humans can do a lot without formal. I would say there's still formal authority, but without having the traditional management hierarchy. And I would always also say that having a hierarchy sometimes really helps teams being fast. So in Formula One especially, and it also connects to the theme of the conference, right? Designing for turbulence. Formula One teams need to be able to respond really quickly to changing circumstances. So imagine at one point suddenly it starts to rain. It's one of those things that nobody can predict. Well, what the weather is going to be and when exactly it's going to rain in what corner of the track. So teams have to immediately respond with maybe adjusting their race strategy. They have to go change the tires at the right time. So this group really needs to respond super fast to any turbulence and need to turn those things into learning opportunities. And that in Formula One teams, there is an extremely steep and clear hierarchy, especially in the race team. There's no ambiguity of who is going to make what decision at what time. And that is an upside, an advantage of having a clear hierarchy that we should cherish. And you can still achieve that in a self-managed organization. And actually, the best self-managed organizations are really good at clarifying authority, delegating authority explicitly. But it's a lot of hard work. And the management hierarchy comes with problems, but it also comes with some built-in advantages. So it's also always clear like who is the boss and who's to escalate to. As much as we maybe as idealists want to reduce that downside, there's also upsides to consider.
And also when we are thinking of change and big org change, people need guidance and
Yeah.
how we work with that. That you remember once you also mentioned in your book that there was a big change project you were working on, and
Hmm.
it was not it was a top down. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
As most change projects are.
yeah, and
Let's shuffle the boxes on the org chart.
what can we learn from that, and how it is better when there is more participation, and what happened, the big change, how it doesn't work, and how small steps can lead to better and more involvement and change, and what you can learn from that, and what is the teaching behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go into that. I just wanted to say because I noticed that there's no comments yet on LinkedIn. So if people are watching this live, feel free to drop any comments in the LinkedIn comment and we'll see them and put them on stage. We're really excited to hear from you as well. No, yeah. So right. So change projects, top down reorgs are quite common. Unfortunately, they always look really clean from the top. It's like, let's put a new design in place, a new structure in place. We're going to shuffle what teams are working, and then all of our problems should be solved, right? The reality is obviously that those changes are often actually they're not delivering the outcome that we're looking for. They're hugely disruptive. They might get, the disruption, the frustration, the paralysis on the ground can last for a year or maybe a decade if it's really traumatizing. So yeah, like you said, Sophie, we at Unblock we advocate for participatory change, involving the groups. And if you look at a Formula One team, they are constantly looking for small improvements everywhere. It's built into everything they do. So after each pit stop, after each race, after each delivery of a new component, there's a feedback loop, and they're like, "Oh, how did it actually go? Did it do what we wanted to do? Was there anything hindering us from doing something better? Is there anything that was there any mistake? Well, with those mistakes, can we learn from that?" And this continuous refinement removes the necessity for huge big shift changes. Still, there might be teams where stuff is really stuck and a new leader comes in and they want to really make a mark and maybe get rid of a department that's always dragging everybody down or really going strong and fast. But it's a tool in the toolbox and it shouldn't be used every day. I really believe, especially if you want to design for turbulence, is that you're a constantly evolving and learning system. So yeah.
So the importance of feedback again here here
Yeah,
here.
it is feedback loops in the most broadest sense of the word. So it is definitely also interpersonal feedback, but it's also looking like an org. Leaders and team members are always looking like org designers. So something happens. So there's lots of examples out there from a problematic pit stop, maybe where one person seemed to make a mistake and the car wasn't able to continue. And in traditional organizations, you might get somebody's looking for blame. Who's this person who made this mistake, and we have to fire that person and replace them so it won't happen again. But in Formula One teams, they look at that completely differently. They understand that it's always a systemic problem. So you have to always look from a systems perspective, like what were all the factors that are contributing to this effect. And turns out that so often it's not the person who is at blame. It's actually multiple things coming together at the same time. Often it's communication problems, it is technical equipment problems, and they really take a lot of time to see what can we learn from all the factors and put measures in place so it doesn't happen again. So yeah, it's people should always look from org design perspective and systems perspective to understand what are all the factors.
And what is the biggest challenge when you are working with leaders and organizations?
Oh, that's such a broad question. I think. Oh, there's a question from Sebastian here. Let's look at Sebastian's question, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, sure. What
So
strikes me is the immediate performance metrics, a race or a new car each season. How do you compare this to the corporate world with 3-5 year outlook?
yeah, I mean it's a fair point that Sebastian is making. Is that the pace of each organization and environment is different. But I would always look at Formula One to show that you can always go faster if you really want to go faster or if you need to go faster. So if you're working in an organization that has a 3 to 5 year outlook, and you have the wave of change accelerating, with all the changes that are happening in the global economy, but also with AI rising. We just had our huge COVID step change. You can no longer hold on to the idea, like comfortable idea, that if we just plan for 3 to 5 years ahead, we're going to be fine and we're still going to survive. There's a sense of urgency that's growing, and I would always say to leadership teams, like, yes, of course, you have a 3 to 5 year time horizon, but what if you need to change tomorrow? Are you ready for that? Are you prepared for faster movements? And is this pace of change fast enough compared to the competition and the outside world? So yeah, that's the lens I always use, and I think that especially in digital organizations where you're not manufacturing large things, there is a possibility to change quickly. There's a possibility to turn your products around quite quickly these days. And Formula One is actually proving that even in a physical manufacturing environment, it's also possible. So that's what I would say to Sebastian's question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were asking the biggest problems. In the Unblock book, I describe six organizational barriers that I encounter a lot. I wouldn't be able to choose from those six because every organization is different. But I would say is that a recurring problem is that there's a difference of perspective. So as a leader, you don't see the same problems as the people that are in the front lines, or actually the people that are either doing the value adding work or talking to customers every day. There's a disconnect, and there's something about that disconnect that causes asymmetry of information and also bad decision making sometimes. So part of the work we do is trying to connect the worlds of the front line with what leaders are seeing and doing, and vice versa. It's not only that the leaders need to learn more about what the people in the front lines are experiencing, but it's also important that the people in the front lines, who often complain, about, oh, those leaders, they don't really get us. They always bring these ideas, but they don't ever listen to us. Leaders in the front lines also need to start thinking like they are the CEO of the company, so that they can, in their day-to-day decisions, make better choices. And if I connect it back to the Formula One teams, after each race on Monday morning, there is an all-hands race debrief. So if you go on the internet and you Google that, you'll find photos of a huge hall of people with those 1,000 people all gathered around, and one microphone in the middle, where it's often the team principal and then sometimes some other key leaders and maybe sometimes even the drivers. They talk through everything that happened during the race and during the race weekend. So everybody at the same time gets the same information and understands the priorities that are there for up until the next race. And that is hugely beneficial because then they can think as if they are the team principal in the mindset, the context, the strategic awareness of the bigger picture. So then when they go back to their desks, they know what small decisions they need to make every day. And that goes back to that aligned autonomy that I talked about earlier.
Wow. And at the conference, you are going to speak at the second day. Mm-hmm. And will you be there for the whole conference? And who do you think should be definitely not missing your keynote speech and that second part when we are talking about teams and how we see the opportunity?
I have not booked my travel yet. It's a busy period for me. I'm doing different conferences that period, but so I might not be there the whole conference, but I want to be there at the end of the first day if I can. And I think the topic, I'm just usually passionate about it as an organization designer myself, working with leaders all the time. It's a source of inspiration that just helps me clarify ideas that we see in other places. So, before I discovered Formula One as an example, I was preaching about how great Google was and how amazingly fast Facebook was able to innovate. And then every time I worked with the leadership team of a bank, for example, like a financial institution, they were like, that sounds great for Google, but we are a bank, so that doesn't work for us. And somehow when you bring in a not so obvious metaphor like Formula One as a sport, people can lower their defenses and think about, of course we're not a Formula One team, but let's listen what is possible. And it's always been helpful over the years to to convince people to think a little bit differently. I'm also holding that example loosely, like I said at the start. It's not a perfect world. There's controversies, there's politics, there's stuff happening that's always not great, as you often have, I think, with highly competitive environments. But it's just a source of inspiration, and I hope that the speech at the start of day 2 gives enough input so people have new ideas of what they can think about for their own organizations.
Yeah, I hope I'm really looking forward to meeting you there at the conference.
Yeah, likewise.
Do you see any other questions on LinkedIn?
Not yet, no. So if people after Sebastian have others, or maybe Sebastian has more, happy to answer them.
And what do you think, who should definitely not miss the conference, and who it should be good to come for? Because EODF is a community, so we are meeting every year. We have an annual conference in a different city in Europe, and there is a group of volunteers who are organizing the conference. And this year's theme is designing for turbulence. So we were looking for speakers around this topic, and basically this is our community's annual meeting point. Plus, we are inviting new people and new members to join and to experience what the EODF community is about. And here is another question. Do you see that other companies like banking, government implementing Formula One based learnings to become faster and more efficient?
Yeah, that's a nice question from Dawa. And yes, I think there are some principles and ideas that are being adopted. I don't know if that's necessarily because of Formula One and the work I do, but one thing that I see more and more is that teams are more intentional with what we call a strategic operating rhythm. So it's a long, difficult sentence, but it's like building a rhythm in the organization, a heartbeat of interlocking events or interlocking rituals that together brings forward the strategy and implements the strategy into day-to-day work. That's something that Formula One teams are super strong in, and I do more often now come into contact with organizations that have really well facilitated quarterly events to align everybody, to talk about priorities, and then that's seeing percolated into weekly and monthly meetings. So that's what I have seen, especially banking, actually. They've made a lot of changes. I see similar things now in pharmaceutical companies a lot. That seems like a big wave of change there. Big necessity, of course, but also the right conditions to make step changes. Government, still getting there. I think government has their own challenges, at least in the Netherlands, in terms of the rules they have in place. Yeah, it's a very different ballgame. But still, like I think some teams, some organizations are strong in terms of decision making. Other teams are stronger in strategic planning, and even other organizations are really good at psychological safety and teamwork and highlighting that. To me, all of the 6 factors from the Unblock book need to come together to be super high performing. But yeah, I think it's also good to acknowledge that some organizations are just already doing really good stuff and it's not all broken. But if you go look outside of your industry, there might always be good examples and ideas that you can adopt. And I think that's what a conference like EODF can do if you're going there, is to just get into contact with lots of other people that are looking from the organizational perspective and just walking back home with new ideas.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we are arriving to the end of our conversation.
There's one more from Sebastian before we stop. Should we do
Cool.
that one as well? I'm putting it on the screen.
Sure.
It's a long one. So you
I
can take
visited McLaren Formula One team in the UK years ago for an interview. Maybe this is what you were mentioning. Too. It was a clinical environment. Even in the office was brand grade, desk high, tailored, and only water allowed at the desk, no coffee or food. the engineering culture was throughout, where there any challenges presented by that attention to data,
To detail, yeah.
detailed incremental performance.
Yeah. So it's actually interesting. I have not visited McLaren, but McLaren is currently the dominating factor in the sport, while before it was Red Bull and before that it was Mercedes. McLaren has been indeed very famously being super strict in a lot of things. And actually, I think that now that Zach Brown is CEO, the new team principal for the last maybe 4 or 5 years, they seem to have loosened that a little bit, because I'm almost like an autistic engineer that was running the team, and you couldn't make a joke because that's not serious. Formula One is serious, so there was this culture that was a bit too intense, and that tied people's hands, and they couldn't really loosen up and have fun with their colleagues a lot. And I just heard an interview actually this week where the culture has shifted a little bit at McLaren, where there's more opportunity to be basically just be human. And that may have also contributed to their huge success on track right now. It's hard to kind of track back what exactly is influencing it. In Formula One teams, it's always a combination of culture, but also technical facilities and technical engineering talent that have to come together somehow to be high performing, and let alone the driver. The driver's talent is important as well. But yeah, I've not. So Sebastian, I'd love to hear more from that about that period, but McLaren was a bit too strict, and maybe now they're doing well because they're a bit more loose. So
if there are no more questions, I think we would arrive to the end of our LinkedIn Live.
sure.
I'm very happy to host you today, Jurriaan, and we are looking forward to seeing you and meeting you in September, Budapest. And I hope with Sebastian too, you will meet and you will have the possibility to talk. Yeah.
Awesome.
So see you there in September 1920, and see you on stage on the second day.
Cool. Thank you so much. Seems like the URL to the conference is in the bottom now, so you can see where you need to go for tickets. I'm really looking forward to it, and it was a lot of fun, this conversation. So looking forward for more.
Thank you. Thank you, Jurriaan.
Thank
See you.
Bye-bye.
See you in Budapest.